Hello and welcome back to the Sterling Podcast. I'm Julia Williams, your host, and today we welcome back a familiar face she is extremely experienced when it comes to the ever-evolving world of HR. We welcome back Sarah Cook, who is the founder and director of WeDo-HR Support. And as a company, they help businesses really stay strong, resilient, they thrive, and then more importantly than all, they are compliant. So welcome back, Sarah. How are you?
Thank you, Julia. I'm very well, thank you. Thanks for having me.
That's good. So Sarah, look, as always, there's always so many changes when it comes to HR. So what are the key employment law changes that businesses need to be aware of?
Okay, so you've heard, obviously, with the change in government, we have this employment bill. The bulk of the legislation is likely to come in towards the back end of this year or next year. But we have had some key changes over the last few months, and we've got a few more coming up in the next few months. So flexible working requests, so that is now a day one right for everybody. Prevention of sexual harassment, that came in October, and there are some key things that employers need to have done to make sure they are compliant with that legislation. And we've just had an announcement of the new rights for neonatal additional leave and pay if you, like me, have very early babies or babies that need to stay in hospital shortly after birth. So that will be in April.
So what's the impact of these for small and medium-sized businesses then?
Well, initially the impact is there's more stuff to do. You've got to change your process. You've got to deal with that thing in a different way that you dealt with it before. Something like neonatal care, it might be 4 or 5 years before, as a business, you suddenly experience the need to give somebody additional leave for neonatal care. It just depends on how often people in your organisation get pregnant, and then how often, a baby needs to stay in special care baby unit. So it could be years, but you need to have your policy up to date just in case something happens. With the prevention of sexual harassment, that's quite a big change to the way that we've dealt with these things before. So everybody should have updated their policy. They should have a risk assessment in place, and they should have done some training. And that's really the key things that they need to do to make sure that if there is a claim, they're not found liable because they haven't done the right things in terms of getting the prevention actions in there along with their policies.
It can be overwhelming if you're a business owner, you've got a company. Like, how does WeDo-HR Support, I suppose, help prevent businesses from feeling overwhelmed and to be able to really just cope with the changes and prepare them?
Yeah, so we have various different types of clients, but our main bulk of clients are on a retained basis. So they pay us a monthly fee, and we keep, part of the deal is we keep them up to date. So with the prevention of sexual harassment, for example, everybody will have had a new policy. They will have had a risk assessment template. And they will have had some slides to deliver some training. We've just started doing, so we did the slides, and then for one of our clients asked for a bit of a voiceover on them. So we did a little bit of a voiceover, and we sent that out to a few people, and they're like, oh, that's a really good idea. So we've just started doing a few more. We've just done some slides on right to work checks. So with a voiceover saying this is what you need to do, and this is why you need to do it. And this is what the fine could be if you don't do it, type of thing. So we're trying to find different and innovative ways to keep clients up to date. But the main point is if you work with us or any outsourced HR provider, like we are, like a local business, you should be getting your update as and when the legislation changes. So you should be getting an update to your policy and instructions on what you need to do. And, depending on how comprehensive your support package is, You might then get, we might come out and do a training session for you if you're on a kind of like all the whistles and bells support package. We'll come out, we'll train your line managers, we'll train your staff, we'll leave you with, slides and resources and things like that. If you're on a, just let me know what I need to do package, then we'll send you out the information and say, this is what you've got to do with it.
How do businesses really manage their expenses, particularly in terms of, trying to retain talent and be compliant at the same time?
It's really difficult. And we've been spending some time trying to be creative with this sort of scenario because, you've got businesses where you might have people who've worked with you for 3 or 4 years and they've had an increase every year for the last 3 or 4 years as the minimum wage has gone up. So as we head into April, and you'll be maybe increasing those people to £12.21 an hour, and they are, they're experienced. They've been with you for a few years, but now you're taking on new people and you're having to take them on at the same hourly rate. So you can understand why the guys who've been with you for a few years are going to say, well, hang on a minute. Yeah, I'm really experienced. I'm teaching these people what to do. Yeah, I'm earning the same money as them. But from a, small business owner's perspective, it's impossible to increase that salary with the national insurance burden as well and be able to pay those people more money than you are the new people coming in. So one of the things we've looked at with a few of our clients is being creative and looking at benefits packages. So what we've put in place for a couple of people is things like, once you've been with us for 2 years and you are experienced and you've got, this level of experience, etc., we are introducing, death in service, extra holiday, income protection, a cash plan, so a medical cash plan or medical insurance, and things like that. And that is going down really well with our clients because it's saving money, and especially if you put it into place under a salary sacrifice scheme, then, you can be saving the national insurance contribution that you're saving can help to fund some of the benefits that you are giving. So that's quite a nice way of doing things. Additional holiday, although it seems like, well, I'm paying people to do nothing then, or paying people more often to do nothing because they're off on holiday. It's actually easier than you think to manage. You do tend to manage the time off because colleagues are normally quite supportive of each other. So if somebody's going on holiday, they're happy to kind of like muck in, take over, do a few bits and pieces while so-and-so's on holiday because they know they will do the same for them. I think adding additional holiday in, it's easy to manage. It's quite cost effective because you're paying that money anyway. You're just, losing the productivity for that day. And you can do things like, birthdays off. That's, that's the nice thing to have your birthday off. And I don't, Neil will be telling me off for giving you off. Birthdays off is a nice thing to do. And it tends to go down really well. People tend to appreciate that.
I'd appreciate that. Lovely. Look, so one of the things that really springs to mind is sometimes when businesses are growing, and they think, like, I need more team members, I need to employ more people. What are the hidden costs behind that?
So it's, for me, it's the cost of getting it wrong. So if you employ the wrong person, then it's, A, all the time and trouble that you went to put them in place in the first place. And then B, all the time and trouble it takes to put it right once you found they're the wrong person and, move them on, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And I think, really with recruitment, it comes back to, the saying of fail to plan and plan to fail. Recruitment is one thing that you should be really, really thinking about. It is a big commitment. So if you are going to take on a full-time person on minimum wage, it's going to cost you 25 or more £1,000 a year. So think about it from the perspective of if you were going to buy a piece of kit that cost 25 to 30 grand, you would think long and hard about it and what you needed it to do and how you needed it to improve your process and how quickly it needed to give you a return on investment, wouldn't you?
Yeah, definitely.
To do that with people, but you are investing in an asset that is not only going to cost you, 25 to 30 grand this year, it's going to keep costing you 25 to 30 grand every year. So you should be thinking about what you need from that person. And the more thought and preparation you put in front of the recruitment process, the less time, trouble and spend you will have after the recruitment process. But it's, everywhere. We all do it. Somebody hands their notice in and you think, I've got to get something, really quickly. And we don't do the planning work. And of course, if somebody hands their notice in, I'm always saying to you, okay, this is an opportunity now. There's an opportunity to have a look at the business and say, do I need another one of those or do I need something different? Has the business moved on since that role was in place? What's the best way to fill those hours? So I would always say to people, really, really think about what it is you want from that recruitment process. And to a certain extent, when you're doing your planning and setting your budgets for the year, think about staff. Am I going to need any more? What will happen if someone leaves? What do I want the team to look like and be doing at the end of the year? So if I'm planning for a 25% increase in revenue, what does that look like in terms of the people that are working for me? And if you start thinking about it then when you do have a vacancy, you've done a bit of the planning beforehand as well. So I would definitely, even if you're only a tiny business, think about workforce planning, which, when you're an in-house HR director, that could be a massive, great spreadsheet that personally used to drive me nuts. But even if you're only a 2 or 3 person business, it can be about, okay, at what point, what are the milestones we need to hit before we say, okay, we need to get somebody else in.
I want to touch now on workplace culture because it's something that really I think is become more and more prominent. How important is it for the workplace culture to be right to attract and retain staff?
Well, as you know, this is my particular, this is my bag. This is what I love to do and I'm really passionate about. And it makes all the difference in the world. So if you are, if I'm looking for a role, I'm looking for, what is that business like? What is, what's the culture? What's it like to work there? If you think about your first day anywhere, it's not so much the work that you want to know about. It's the things like what's the protocol on personal mobiles? What happens at lunchtime? Do people go out? Do they eat at their desk? What do we do about getting a cup of tea? Do you just get up and go and get one? Or does somebody, say, or there's certain times of day where it's expected? And it's all those kind of like unwritten rules that people spend their first few days trying to negotiate and navigate. And it is about understanding the culture of the business. It's the way we do things around here. Culture is measured and tested in observed behaviour. So that is what people are making their decision on. So as a CEO, you can say, we have this type of culture. But if people aren't seeing that behaviour in the workplace, then you don't have that type of culture. You have whatever it is in the workplace.
Of course.
So by getting the right culture, you are A, attracting people who want to work in that type of environment, and B, retaining people who want to work in that type of environment, losing or turning over the people that don't want to work in that type of environment. And to a certain extent, that's okay, because you want people who are relaxed and happy and comfortable in the cultural environment that you have built. You don't want people who are struggling against it, because if they're fighting against it, they're not bringing their whole self to work every day. It's not good for them and it's not good for you as a business.
Well, it can change the whole dynamic of a company, can't it, if you don't get it quite right? What are some, well, advice, please? What simple and impactful ways could businesses improve their workplace culture?
So I think the first thing to do is to understand what your culture is. From a CEO's perspective, what do you want it to be? What are your values? What's really important to you that you have, in your culture? For me, service quality is really important. So it's really important to me that we are listening to our clients and we are being creative and solving issues for them. So that shows up in behavior. And I think anyone who's worked with me will say it shows up in my behavior, because what I'm always saying is there must be a way to, and it's always in the focus of solving the customer's problem or their pain point, whatever it is. So as a CEO, think about what is important to you. What type of culture do you want for this business? And then test and see if you've got that culture. And that is doing a survey. And they are relatively easy to do. We design survey packages for people all the time. We do surveys for our clients. We can also do a one-off project package, design a survey, collate the details, and give you a presentation and some feedback on it as a distinct package. You don't have to come to us. Lots of people do that sort of thing. But that is the way, is to test it, because you don't know what people are observing. And if you are not thinking and talking about your culture all the time, then it could be going in a direction that you don't necessarily want it to go.
Yeah.
And the other thing to be aware of as well is, if you are recruiting and bringing people in, everyone comes in with a little bit of the culture of the place they worked before or the place they worked before that. And if they don't understand what you want your culture to be and what the right behaviours are, they will dilute your culture for good or for bad.
Yeah.
But they will dilute it with the behaviours and the culture that they bring with them. So it's really important, if you want to get the right culture, that you are mindful of that and on top of that.
Of course. And how strong would you say is, the workplace culture when it comes to the success or lack of success for a business?
I mean, there's loads of research out there that says that, when you've got a positive culture, you are getting better results. I was trying to find a figure earlier on, and I couldn't find this. There were so many surveys, I couldn't pick one that made sense. But if you've got a positive workplace culture, then you have got people who are comfortable and happy at work. They're not having to hide things or worry about stuff. So there's not all, their attention isn't being taken by other stuff to think about. So they're giving their attention to their work. So they're being more productive. They're more engaged. They're happier. There's a stat I do remember that, an engaged workforce contributes, businesses with an engaged workforce are 76% more likely to be profitable than businesses without. So all of these things, when you're doing this, everything you can do to help employees be happy at work is driving your productivity. Working on that, being aware of it, describing the culture and the behaviours that you want. And that doesn't necessarily mean, it doesn't mean there's a bit of a thing of happy employees are productive employees. So happy employees are generally productive employees. But, I quite often hear, but some people are happy when they're doing nothing. And, that does happen. But 9 times out of 10, in a productive culture, you're managing those people. And the other thing that happens in a positive workplace culture is the rest of your team will manage those people. So you can, there's a thing in team dynamics, which is self-managing. And that is where the manager doesn't need to say anything, because the people sat either side will say, yeah, what are you doing? Get on with this. Haven't you done that yet?
Yeah.
And they are managing the people for you. And that, that is invaluable, because that helps either that person improve their performance or say to themselves, actually, this isn't the place for me, and move on.
And look, at the moment, there's growing more and more people are either working hybrid or remote. But as an employer, how do you manage that to keep everybody cohesive and together as a team?
So I think this is a new skill for the modern age, is managing a hybrid team, and it is a new skill, and I think we need to help and support line managers to be able to do that. But there are lots of things you can do. So I mean, if we start with when you're asking people to come into the office, I think if you're asking people to come into the office, then make sure that that is adding value, that I can see a reason that what I did today in the office, I could not have done at home. So
Right.
I couldn't have, had that conversation, been in that meeting, experienced that thing, et cetera, et cetera. So if you are making sure that when your people are coming into the office, something key is happening, then that helps hybrid work. We've got a client in London, and they work 3 days a week in the office. They dictate 2 of the days. So it must be a Tuesday and a Wednesday. And that is when they have their all hands meeting and their team meetings, and any training that they're going to be doing happens on those 2 days. And then one other day in the week. And that is about covering the physical space and making sure that there is always somebody from every team in the office on one other day of the week. And that works really well. And that makes a difference, because people understand what they are coming into the office for, and they can see that it is, it's making a difference.
Yeah.
When you've got people working from home as a line manager, it is about being in touch, being visible. Had a conversation the other day with one of our contacts she's an expert in working with people with neurodiversity. And she was telling me about body doubling, which is something that works for people who are dyslexic or ADHD, where you just are like we are now on a Teams screen, but you're just getting on with your work separately. But the very fact of having somebody there is, adds a comfort. So I think as line managers, one of the things to be mindful of is getting everybody together on camera, once or twice a day. So it depends on the flow of the business and what you're doing. You might not need to get together every day. You might need to get together a couple of times a week, but you might need to be together every morning to say, okay, this is what we've got to get done today. If you're making calls and acting on orders and things like that, it might be really important to get together in the morning, talk about everything, and then get together at the end of the day and review what's happened and what needs to go forward to tomorrow. So, think about the workflow of your team, and you can think about it from the perspective of, if we were in the office, what would we do? And replicate what you would do, sat in an office on a Teams. But you have to be more prescriptive about it when people are hybrid. You can't just walk up to someone's desk and say, Julia, how's this going? You have to set the time aside to say, let's jump on a call and find out how this is going. So I think, there are things you can do, but it's going to be a skill for the future.
Yeah. The final question I really want to ask you is, what are the common mistakes that business leaders make when they're trying to change the work culture?
I'm expecting it to happen overnight. It's, I said earlier on, culture is about observed behaviour.
Yeah.
So if you think about, if you are trying to change if you're, trying to set up a habit or kick a habit, how hard that is to do, because you have that behaviour ingrained in you. my other half's trying to give up smoking at the moment. And, they're not for the first time. But, there are certain behaviours, like first thing in the morning and last thing at night. So there are certain cigarettes that are much harder to stop than other ones are. So if you are trying to change a culture, you've got to think about it from it's about behaviour change. And it's you as the senior leadership team that are setting that change. So you've got to keep it front of mind. You've got to be focused on it all the time. And if you take your eye off the ball and stop, doing what it was you said you would do, then people aren't going to be observing you doing it. And really where you want to get to is if 80% of the people are observing you doing the behaviour all the time or most of the time, then that's when you've got that as part of your culture.
Yeah.
But so it's, it's quite high and people need to see it a lot. So it's hard. And it can take, if you look at the research, it'll all tell you, it takes 18 months to 2 years to change a culture.
Wow.
And you can do it quicker. You've got to be focused on behaviour. And of course, the smaller the team, the easier, the quicker it is to change. Not necessarily easier, but quicker it is to change.
Well, Sarah, as ever, it is fantastic to talk to you and, just to listen to your experience and expertise. And I'm sure lots of our listeners have really got some great value from that. Thank you so much again for joining us.